Hi there and welcome to another watercolour landscape tutorial. As you can see, we're now heading into Christmas, so my thoughts have turned towards snow scenes and winter scenes. And I did think, how do I do something with a Christmassy theme that doesn't have snow on it? And I can't think of anything. To me, if it relates to Christmas, there's snow on the ground. And I've had a few emails and comments on the members forum in the last few months asking for something with a bit of old farm machinery and a tractor, something like that. And somebody sent me some lovely photos of that sort of thing, which would have made good paintings, but they were taken from the internet, and you have to be very careful with any sort of copyright issues. So I had to look for something else, and on Shutterstock, which is a photo stock system that I use and pay for, so I am allowed to use them. I found this lovely scene of what it calls it Sugar Shack in New England. And as we've got quite a lot of members out in the USA, I thought that might appeal to them as well. But it's really the composition of it and this old rusting plough in the foreground there, with the red barn, or sugar shack as it's called, is a great composition and subject anyway. It's the sort of thing that really appeals to me. So I thought this would make an excellent landscape painting. Couple of issues with it. We've got a red building, and of course anything that's red tends to come forward. And things because it's a warm colour. Things in cooler colours like blue and grey sink further back, and yet we've got to make this old plough look in front of it. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do that yet. We'll see. We'll see when I get to it. It'll involve a certain amount of masking fluid, of course, and that's the first thing really. Obviously, where we've got white on the top of this little. I don't know what that is, but it's like a little shed on top of the shed. And I like that. I like that little structure there with the old weathered timber. But because we've got snow on top of that and a little bit sat on top of the chimney and the roof itself, we need to keep that nice and crisp and white until we're ready to paint it. So I think that's the first thing to put the masking fluid on. So we'll just wet the brush, rub it on the soap, and start with the roof. Now there's a little lean-to here with a bit of snow on the roof. You just glimpse through the wheel there, and then there's this main roof. And I mean, I certainly wouldn't. You don't want to get any of the sky on this if you can possibly avoid it. But I wouldn't put masking fluid over the whole roof because it just uses too much. But be quite generous with it. If you only put a thin line around it, the chances are you'll still get blue all over it when we paint the sky with some nice broad strokes of a big brush. Okay, so we glimpse it on the edge of the opposite side of the roof there. Then there's a nice blob of snow on top of that chimney. Okay, following the line of snow all the time, and again making sure that I'm quite generous with the masking fluid. Okay, it's a fairly heavy layer of snow on top. So, well, perhaps it isn't actually by New England standards, but it means you get a bit of curves onto the corners. Okay, now there is a glimpse of snow down that side there, and that's the sort of thing where I'm painting now. I wouldn't worry too much about that because that's the sort of little area where you could put a bit of gouache there if you lost that line. Okay, and then down into this is sort of a little extension of the building as well. Quite a lot of white in this. There's not a lot of shadow. I may well because I love a bit of shadow across the snow, so I may well add more, bit of artistic license. Now there's a definite snow line there where there's a distant meadow meets the distant trees. And certainly we need to make sure, so we can get this nice red on the shack, need to make sure we preserve the white paper there. Couple of big rocks or something with snow laying on them. I mean, some of this, when I'm painting the barn there, I don't need to have the snow line. That's all gets lost behind the detail of the old plough. There is another snow line across here that goes behind that wheel. Okay, so what about that? No, I don't think I need to put any on the trees. I mean, those the bits of snow that you can see on the tree branches. That's probably better added on with a bit of white gouache. Probably one of the last things in the painting. Now I have got to put some masking fluid onto this plough, but I'm going to get my hands on what I've already done, and I've made a bit of a mess down here with it, so I'm going to get it dry and then clean that up, and then we'll look at where we're going to mask this piece of old farm machinery. Okay, so that's dried, and I've now got to think about how I want to use masking fluid on the old plough. Generally you would put masking fluid on where the background is going to be darker, so you've still got a light colour in front of it, and that applies to some extent to this. I mean, if you look at the spokes of this wheel here at this point, the dark under that lean-to there is darker than the spokes are, so I would mask those. So let's start with that. So I've got the smaller masking fluid brush, and I think I'm going to do the whole of that wheel. Now this is where you need to be careful that you don't overdo it and get the wheel looking a bit wobbly, or a bit or you lose that nice elliptical shape, or that you make it too wide. You need to guard against making it too wide as well. Okay, so now I'm going to need to put some spokes in there, but again I've got to do this in stages so that I don't just put my hand all over where I've got wet masking fluid. There's things over here where we could do with some, like there's the old seat, what looks like the old seat, just covered in a layer of snow. So we definitely want that to be nice and white. There's some other lumps of snow laying on top of the machinery on there. And just this side of that wheel there. Quite a bit really. I mean you can't really overdo this, because if you've got too much white paper you can put some paint on it. But if you haven't got enough paint, enough white paper, and then you start rescuing it with gouache, you lose some of that spontaneity in it. I think that's all right though there. Now, let's look at this wheel. That wheel is generally, apart from the snow sitting on top of it, it's generally darker than the background, so you wouldn't really need to mask that. But I'm not sure. I might want a little bit of light on it, and that's a bit of rust colour with that's a little bit lighter in parts. So, as a sort of insurance, I am going to mask that. But you may think that's unnecessary, and you don't have to do this. Okay, and let's bring that round, trying to get as good as neat a, I say circle, it is basically a circle, but at this angle it's an elliptical shape. Okay, now I'll probably put some spokes in there, but the difficulty I've got, of course, is that trying to paint these spokes in while the outer rim of the wheel is still wet, I'm going to get in a mess with it. So let's look for something else. Now there's a long bar straight across here, the main structure of this, and just for the sake of being able to sort it all out later, even though it's darker than the background, I'm going to put some masking fluid on it. Don't need to mask these lower things here. This hub to the wheel, yeah, won't hurt, I don't think, to mask that out. Get a little bit of light on it later on. Okay, let's see if we can now do these spokes. I only really want to do the spokes where they are lighter than the background, so I probably don't need to bother with those spokes there. Here though, we've got these two coming down there, and you do have to get these really fine. Try and get them nice and straight as well, not wobbly. Best way to do it is try not to hesitate, one continuous line, painted quite quickly. There's a bit of steel work that sticks up there, a bar of some sort, but I don't think I need to mask that. I think I've probably done sufficient masking there, so we'll put that away. And mind you, even now looking at it, I can see where I've caught my hand on it. It's difficult to work on something like this without getting in your own way, getting your hand on it. Yeah, I think that will do. Now that needs some drying time. You can't rush it, because if you start painting while the masking fluid is damp, it doesn't. Oh, just missed a bit. Here we go. The edge, and this is lighter than the background, so it's quite important. It's behind those wheel spokes, I know, but the edge of that leads you. Now this might look as though it's going to be tricky to sort it all out, but I don't think it is. It's a bit of caution putting this much masking fluid on, but I think it'll be easier to sort out than it looks. So we need to. I want quite a strong sky, because if you look at this rich dark blue across the top of the sky is really emphasising the white of the snow. It's giving us a really good contrast. So let's have a look. We'll take some cobalt blue first of all with some ultramarine blue, a nice rich blue, and then I'm going to make another mixture of cobalt blue and ultramarine blue. And then I want to darken that, go a shade darker. So I'm going to try a little bit of, it's almost like a midnight blue. I'm trying a little bit of burnt sienna in it. Now, too much burnt sienna and it'll go grey or even black. But that doesn't look bad. That looks quite strong. Won't know till I get that on the paper and try it. But so we'll see. Now. I want to sponge the whole background with clean water. Actually, I think I'll be better with a brush, a 1-inch flat brush. Now, ignore the trees. You want to get your sky right behind those, and it's a 1-inch flat, clean water. Put plenty on. Yeah, get it nice and wet. Come right down to your masking fluid. If you leave a gap above your masking fluid, you get like a white halo around everything. That's the whole purpose of it, so you can come right down to it. Okay, now I'm going to look at this sideways on. Just make sure that you see the shine on the paper so that you know you haven't missed any. Okay, I'm going to start with the lighter mixture of cobalt blue and rose madder. Now there's no cloud in this as such, so you can just sweep across. It goes a bit lighter behind the trees there, so maybe a good idea to let the brush get a bit low on paint as you get down there. So the colour naturally lightens, okay. Now I'm going to get the darker blue. Let's see what that's like. Yeah, that's nice. That's really going to give us a bit of oomph in the sky, a bit of a lift. A bit more of it. I think I need to take a bit more cobalt. It's quite thirsty. I've used up a lot of paint already. Cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, and then a touch of, well, that's a bit strong. Touch of burnt sienna, maybe too strong, needs a bit more ultramarine blue in it. Just get that dark at the top there again. Yeah. I think probably I should come down a bit more. Let's get a bit more of just the cobalt blue and ultramarine blue without the burnt sienna in it. And I probably should get a bit bluer behind the roof there. Keep it nice and wet. Okay, now while that's still nice and wet, I'm going to prop the board up so that I have a little bit of a drop in it like that. Not too much, just that the height of the masking fluid bottle is plenty. And now I want a grey behind these trees. And I deliberately didn't mix the colour for that because I find that the time it takes me to mix it now is just about right for painting. It stops me putting it in too early. So I've got cobalt blue with a hint of ultramarine blue in it, and we'll get a bit of, we'll put a bit of rose madder in it and some burnt sienna. Yeah, that's not a bad grey at all. So I've got a number 8 brush, and we'll just try and get that feeling of distant trees there. Taking it right up to the walls of the shack. Now I can see just behind that corner there. Oh, I'll do this. I'll drop a bit in this side as well while it's mixed. Just behind that corner there, there's like a fir tree. So let's put that in. Yeah, it is a bit of green, but it's very dark. So what I'll do, I'll take some Viridian, ultramarine blue, and burnt sienna. Now this is still very dark. It's like a really dark bluey green, and we can just, the timing should be right about now. You need to get this in while the paper's still damp, so you get that soft feathery effect. If it's too wet, if the paper's too wet, it won't work. It'll look all right for a few seconds, but then it'll carry on dispersing. And that's another reason why you have to have this paint quite thick. If this is thin, it'll just spread like mad, probably make a big cauliflower as well. It's got to be a much thicker pigment, this one. Okay, so maybe here we could just, using the very it's a large brush, this, a number 10, but it's got a good It's got a good point to it. Maybe we could take these branches out a little bit further. It tends to get bigger and bigger all the time as it spreads. Yeah, that should be all right. Maybe, I don't know, for the sake of balance, perhaps we should have one here as well. Very Christmassy, aren't they, these big fir trees? Yeah, okay. Then perhaps down here, I think nearer to the ground, we would have a slightly stronger grey. So I'm cleaning up this brush and just, I'll add a bit more cobalt blue and a bit more burnt sienna to that grey. Maybe a touch of the rose madder as well. And I just want, because if you've got a dense forest or stand of trees, the colour will just be that bit darker nearer to the ground. Okay, so, well, I mustn't overwork that. So, yeah, I think, I tell you what though, looking at it, I'm not fully happy with that tree. Let's try and thicken that mixture up. Viridian, ultramarine, burnt sienna. And I'm going in with a smaller brush, a number 2 detailer. It's not bad, but it's just sort of morphing into a mass. And I haven't got any sort of branch detail. Now it's getting very big now, but who's to say what size it is really, so I'm not really worried about that. But let's try and just get a top to it and extend the branches just slightly like that. So there's a gap between them. Maybe we might see a little bit this side here as well, just the glimpse through the spokes of the old plough. Yeah, okay. Let's get it dried. Okay, so let's put a bit of colour in to suggest the tops of these trees. Maybe a little bit of dry brushwork. And I'm going to put those in quite a light grey so that they really sink back into the sky and the background. But I think before I do that, I will put, as I say, a bit of dry brushwork in to suggest the tops of these distant trees. So let's have it a bit lighter. Let's put a bit of light into it. So I'm going to take some, I've got raw sienna and burnt sienna. Make a sort of orangey colour. Now that should be alright. I'll put a bit of rose madder in it as well. It should be alright, but it's got to be pale. And sometimes the only way you can tell whether you've got that colour pale enough, because it's got to go right back, is by testing a bit and having a bit of tissue at the end in case you don't like it, in case it's too strong and you want to sort of dab it off. So let's see if, let's have a look. What's the shape of the, they actually go right off the top of the seam. So if we start about here, that's probably about the right thickness. It's not just the tops, it's more that it's the middles of the trees as well. If it's a bit strong, maybe you want to make it a bit more subtle, you could use a bit of tissue on it. And then here we've got the tops of these. It's just holding the brush with your thumb on one side of the handle and 4 fingers at the other, so you're laying the flat of it on the paper. Okay, that should be all right. Now that doesn't look much at the moment, I know, but it's like preparation for the next step. Okay, now you can't work branches into that while it's wet, because they'll go all soft and furry, exactly what you don't want. But let's mix some colour first of all. Let's get a bit of grey for these background trees. Now if I take some of that colour from the top of the sky, no, it's a bit strong. I'm going to mix a fresh. Oh, no, I did mix a grey, didn't I? There. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, that grey that I mixed before for these distant trees here, that should be all right, but it's a little bit cold looking. It probably needs a bit more purple in it, a bit more cobalt blue and rose madder. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, I can't. That's still damp, so let's get that dried first. Okay, I've got a number 2 detailer brush. Keep these nice and thin especially towards the top there. Right, I've been cautious here with this grey. It's nice and light. Yeah, so they'll be behind it. And you can do a few variations on it. A slightly stronger grey. We've done this many times. Slightly stronger grey looks a bit nearer. Slightly weaker looks further back. It's good to have a few variations on that. Working my way up, keeping it really thin towards the tops of the trees. And you want to get really thin by the time you get to the top there. And the number 2 detailer brush is ideal for this, so long as it's in good condition. If it's a bit weathered and a bit old, no longer pointed at the tip, it's no good at all. Okay, so you can see where I'm going with this. There's nothing much to say really till I've completed this line of trees across here. So I'll see you when I've done all those. Okay, so as you can see, I've got some background trees in there, all pretty much the same tone. That's deliberate because I want to be able to show how you can do that. You can put them all in the same tone, and then, or you could vary the tone as you paint it along. There's 2 ways to do it, and usually I would vary the tone as I went along. But to just show you this way, if I want to pick out a couple of trees now and make them look just a bit nearer, even though they're all behind the building, let's take this one for instance and just strengthen it up a bit with another layer of the grey. Now I'm trying here first of all to use just the same grey. But it will double up the tone, if you like, because it's just going over a previous layer of grey, and that just makes that one a little bit nearer. Let's try maybe with this one. Because it's subtle, I don't want to make them look much nearer because they're all distant trees. Yeah, I think that gives us sufficient, maybe strengthen that branch there, but I think that gives us sufficient variation. Now let's look at these trees here. These are, I'll bring that in a bit closer. These are quite interesting. There's one or two that are catching a little bit of light, but I didn't think it was enough to warrant masking them out. Because what I can do now, I can take a number 4 brush. That's got dark green all over it. I better get that clean first. And wet the brush, and let's take, for instance, this one here, and we can just lift a bit of colour out by just brushing along the trunk. Maybe you don't have to go right down to the bottom, but that just takes a bit of colour out. It'll allow us to put a bit of colour on it, because it's now lighter paper behind it. Probably here as well we could take some out of this. And I'm staying within my pencil lines. Yeah, I think that's in. Maybe a bit out of that one there. Where there's a fork. Yeah. Okay, so we'll get a better number 4 brush with a bit more point to it, and I've still got the number 2 detailer brushes standing by. Let's put a little bit of, let's try a bit of raw sienna and light red. Okay, just to put it, just because there is a hint of red in that trunk there. Okay, but that's not enough on its own. We'll want other colours to blend with it. So let's mix a bit more grey, cobalt blue, rose madder, and burnt sienna, and probably a bit of. I'm going to clean that up. Probably a bit of dark brown with burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. Maybe a touch of rose madder in that for a bit of warmth. And then let's see how we're going to make those blend together on the paper. So we'll come down here. I'll widen it at that point there. We'll lose it in this mass of stuff down here by just softening it. And then blend it a touch, and then let's bring a bit of a grey in. The light's coming from the, it's hard to tell actually, the light's coming from the right. So yeah, we'll get a bit of dark in at this side here. This is the grey mixture. Put a bit of red in as well. Maybe a bit of dark brown. Yeah, okay. And then here, I'm going to run a bit of that red in again. Bit of grey in. And then run it out to finer branch work like that. It's a bit of the dark brown, that one. Yeah, that should be okay. And that now looks a lot more, it's playing a much bigger part in the picture. This isn't the distance now, this is sort of the middle distance. Okay, now there's There's some good old branches coming out of this here. Bit of grey, bit of dark brown. Yeah. We've got a tree. We can glimpse a bit of tree a bit further back, but in that gap there, that shouldn't be too empty. So I'm putting a grey one in there, a lighter grey one. Yeah, okay. Now working my way up with a mixture of the grey and the dark brown, so that the branches don't look flat, they look as though some are a bit further away than others. Makes the tree look a bit more three-dimensional. And now you work your way to that that shape that we put in earlier on. Maybe a bit of the reddy brown there as well, but you work your way into that shape we put in earlier on with the dry brush work. Okay, and then some grey. Maybe we try a little bit of dark brown as well in one or two places. Yeah. Let's get some more in with the lighter colour, the reddy brown colour, the raw sienna and burnt sienna. No, it was raw sienna and light red. Let's get a bit more, a dark one. There's a nice dark, big, large dark branch runs across there that's got a good coating of snow on it. Right, we need a bit more of that dark brown, I think. Burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, a little bit of rose madder, keep that warmth in it. And let's bring one across that way. Okay, we'll put something in here as well, a little bit of light and a little bit of the red and the brown. There's another tree in about there. Notice I paint the branches quite rapidly, in quick strokes like that. I think they have a lot more spontaneity, look more realistic if you can do that. Rather than a laboured stroke. Okay, let's try again with some red. I'm going to mix a bit more of it. It was raw sienna and light red. Same principle, I'll do this quietly, because this one moving up here with combination of the light red, the grey and the dark brown. And remember, your light red is raw sienna and light red. Your grey is cobalt blue, rose madder and a bit of burnt sienna. Dark brown, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, a little bit of rose madder in it. And it's a combination of all the three, just like I did on that tree that I'm going to do on this one here. Ignore the white snow on the branches. The best way to do that is a bit later on with some gouache. Okay, so done quite a lot of work on those trees. You can see what a difference it makes when I use a variety of colour and tone. I've used about 3 colours there. I've got the reddy brown colour, I've got the grey, which is a bit lighter, and the darker brown. And those 3 together I like to think, make the trees look that bit more 3-dimensional. That little bit of white gouache for snow on the branches later on will be very good. And don't forget to streak some of these branches, maybe with your dark brown colour, across the fir tree. Again, I'm hoping when I've got a bit of snow on those that it disguises the fir tree a bit, because it's not that happy with that. But anyway, it is what it is. Don't rush the tree, but don't overwork it. I started enjoying this a little bit too much, and now I look at it, I may have slightly overworked it, especially compared to the, yeah, I probably have. So keep asking yourself if you've done enough and know when to stop. I've probably made that a bit busy, but not to worry. It could compete with this, which I don't want it to, but we'll see. We'll see how we get on. So the next thing is masking fluid off the roof and the building. Just get that off. We've got a little bit of overspill of the blue. I don't think it's enough to worry about though. I might leave that on the bottom there. No, it won't be necessary. I don't think I really needed to mask the bottom part. When you've got a lot of masking fluid on like that, it can be quite difficult to see it all, and you can end up with a little bit of masking fluid still clinging on. So make sure you do take the time to get rid of it all. I would leave it certainly for the time being on that little meadow there, and on the foreground certainly. I've now smudged some dark across there. Let's just take a sponge. It's strange actually. A smudge of dark pigment is easier to remove than a light one. There's more there to scrub away at, I suppose. But that. Oh, hang on, that tissue wasn't clean. That's better. Okay, now up here, let's clean this brush. But up at the top there, on this little piece on top here, I've maybe been a bit clumsy. So I've got an old brush that's a bit worn at the tip, a number 6 I think it is. And we'll just try and rub some of that out. It's quite, the timber at the top here though is quite dark, so it's probably not going to make a lot of difference. Okay, so let's look at this bit first. It's some really dark grey old timber. So let's take, I might try, here's something I've done a few times before, where I take a bit of red and a bit of blue and let them mix on the paper to create the grey, rather than mixing them in the palette. So I've got a fairly strong dark blue. That's ultramarine and cobalt blue. I think if anything, it's the one from the top of the sky, so it's got a bit of burnt sienna in it as well, which is okay. We want it. This it's quite a dark grey. This would work. Let's try a bit of light red with that. Now that on its own, of course, it's just going to look too red, but get them together on the paper and hopefully we'll get an interesting grey forming. So we go all the way under the snow. Let's put a bit of water in it, keep it flowing. You can get, if it's drying too quickly while you're still painting it, that can be a recipe for cauliflowers. I'm not painting the little chimney, that's going to be a different colour. Similar, but I'm going to treat it differently. Now bring this down into the snow. There, a nice clean white line where it meets the snow. And then straight away I'm picking up the red, and we'll put some of that in. This is the light red. That should give us a grey, a fairly strong grey, but there'll be bits where you can see more blue and bits where you can see more red, which I think is always an interesting way to create a colour. By mixing it on the paper. Let's put a touch more blue in. It's got a light and a dark side, this, so we don't want to go too dark too early. Yeah, that should work well. Like those colours, I quite like the way those colours are blending there. Really though, I can't hurry it up. I could start painting part of the wall here or something while that dries, but if I do that, when I come back to that, I'll smudge it, so that I'll have to let it dry at some stage, so it might as well be now. I'm just making sure I get that right where it meets the snow. Yeah. Let's dry that and see what we've got. Okay, so now that's dried, let's get a bit of shadow on this to make it look a bit more three-dimensional. It's a slow build up, this one, because I want to put some detail into here, some gaps between the planks, etc. But before I do that, I've got to get shadow on to make it appear as though the light's catching it from the front here, but the side's in shadow. And then I'll have to let that dry before I can detail it. So it'll take a bit of time to build it up. So we'll get some shadow in. Actually, the edge of the roof is there like that, so we'll get some shadow under the roof. And bring that, and this is the shadow mixture is a grey, it's cobalt blue, rose madder and burnt sienna. And I think immediately under the roof, where we've got a bit of, where we've got the overhang of the roof, you'll get a bit of dark there. So cobalt blue, burnt sienna, sorry, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and a bit of rose madder. And that gives us that nice rich dark for underneath that eave. And if you get that in while your shadow's still damp, it'll just soften down into it. Now there's a little corner to the roof. I'll go back to the grey. There's a little corner to the roof that should stick out there like that. That's better, yeah. Okay, now that will need a bit more detailing up, but I'll have to wait for those to dry first. While I'm waiting though, we could take a bit of, we could do this chimney with some blue. Leaving the snow on top, and bringing it down to, yeah, it's like a nice metallic colour there, so we'll get a bit of water in to lighten it. And then it goes quite dark where it meets the snow underneath it. And we'll add a little bit of red into that in the same way to create a similar grey to I just used on the bit behind it. Now that'll need some more dark adding into it when it's dried. Okay, so let's get all that dried and I can continue to work on it then. Okay, we can further develop this now. Need a good dark though, ultramarine, burnt sienna, and it's a great colour for, sorry, getting ahead of myself, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, rose madder, just a touch of rose madder, don't lighten it too much with that, which is a great dark for detailing, you know, behind the windows, that sort of thing as well. But it's great for these gaps between the timbers. So I've got a detailer brush. Let's just, I need to bring this in closer so I get a better view of it. Let's just declare the edge of the roof there with a suggestion of line. Through there, okay, and then got to get the angle right on this. but it's quite acute, this one, it's going through there. Yeah, that's okay. And then there's quite a real dark, there's a real opening up between the timbers here. But it's not nice and even. It's nice and uneven because it's weathered. Okay, and then a bit here. Get those angles right though. Important part of the perspective, that. Yeah, okay. There's a rich dark across there underneath the chimney. And to make it cylindrical, I think and to pick it out from the colour next to, from the little building on top there next to it, I think we'll put a bit of dark in there and soften it in to make it appear cylindrical. But that also picks it out from this that's next to it here. Then there's that bit of metal around there which I've lost. Let's see if I can bring that back with just a bit of, need a bit of clean tissue, just scrub the paint away, dab it with a tissue. That brings that little bit of, let's get a touch of blue, that brings that little bit of metal back. That's there, yeah, that's okay. So, I think we can move on now to, maybe just there, just even that up a little bit. So I think we can move on now to the main building. I shall leave the roof white paper, certainly for the time being. Might have a bit of shadow on later, but I'm going to go on to this red here. I've just checked my notes actually, and it's not a sugar shack, it's called a sugar house. I think I'm thinking of the B-52s and the Love Shack. Known to be the only song that I'll ever get up to dance at a wedding to. Okay, not a sight you want to see. Okay, so we'll mix some red. It's quite a vivid red, isn't it? It's quite strong. Certainly, it's got. If you analyse that red, it's got a little bit of like a crimson in it, and I think rose madder will help for that. So let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can mix here. Because I don't want it to be dull, I want it to be a nice bright red. So certainly we've got to start off with a clean area of the palette. Let's try some light red. Now light red always looks a bit warmer if it's got a bit of yellow with it, so we'll add a bit of raw sienna to it to make an orange. And that's not a bad colour, that's quite a nice rich colour. But it's probably just a bit too orange. It lacks that little bit of crimson in it. So let's try some rose madder. A bit more, I think. Now I don't know, let's try that out there. Yeah, that's not bad. It's not a bad colour. I think what we'd better do is give it a try. Now for the top of the gable here, that number 10 brush is a bit big, so I'll put that to one side and we'll go in with this number 6 brush. Yeah, okay. A little bit clumsy there, but I might get away with it. I often do this, add water when I've covered in quite a large area to keep it fluid. Oh, I'm painting around that door and I don't need to. The door's the same colour as the rest of it. But if you've got an area that's sitting dry for even a few seconds, sometimes it can be enough to start it drying. It doesn't matter if I get a bit of drying on that corner, because that is going to be a hard edge anyway because it's a corner. But I think we want a bit of purple in this, a bit of cobalt blue. If I get a bit of cobalt blue and rose madder. Let's try that. Let's see, yeah, it's a bit strong that, but if I spread it about enough. So that it's not a flat colour, it's got a bit of variety to it. Yeah, that's not bad. So let's continue with that. Actually, there isn't a corner there, the corner is here, but it doesn't matter, it'll all connect up. So let's build that across there. Go right behind the wheel. Add a touch of water to keep it fluid. We lose the, it's behind here where we lose a view of the sugar house, and it just becomes white snow. Okay, we can go right across there. All that is darker than the background anyway. Let's add a touch of water, keep it moving, and then right across there. Yeah, that red contrasts really well with the blue in the sky behind it. Now there's an area here where I might have to remove the masking film from the wheel to get to paint this. This little lean-to bit, but we'll come back to that. And then we'll work along there, just where you glimpse a bit of the shed where it meets the ground. And it goes a bit brown there, so let's take a bit of, I've got a grey there, and I'm adding a little bit of burnt sienna to it, because the colour is a bit, it's there's a few weeds and things, so it's a bit of brown in it around there. Okay, now a bit more red. And let's try now a bit of that purple colour. This is clean the brush thoroughly, and let's get a bit more cobalt blue and rose madder. And bring a bit of that in along here. Bit of that brown in there. Yeah, that's okay, those colours are blending nice. And we've got a nice bit of red there. I'm not going to put anything else into that because I think we're going to need that nice bright red there. Okay, it all needs developing at the next stage when it's dried. I think it's about time to dry it, although I could perhaps do with a touch more red under here where it meets the ground. In fact, we ought to maybe bring a touch of purple in there to slightly darken it where it meets the ground. You often get a bit more damp down that part, and it just darkens the colour of the wood. Yeah, okay, let's give that some drying time. Okay, so let's work on the sugar house. And Firstly, there's one or two areas where a bit of detail can be shown up and a bit of weathering illustrated by taking out colour rather than adding some on. We'll do that first. For instance, here, there's a definite line here which is the end of the lean-to and the end of the gable of it there. There's some weathering in the wood here, maybe on the wall there, so a little bit of taking colour out to show that. The reason that's happened, of course, I knew it would, is because I was working wet in wet, which is okay for that stage, but now that I'm doing more detailing, we can do with taking a bit of colour out. So let's try taking a line down there with clean water. It comes out quite easily, actually, maybe a bit too easily. I've maybe pressed on a bit too much there. And that's it, create the line for that bit there. Yeah, that's okay. And then here we've got a bit of weathering on that timber down there. Yeah, maybe a bit of weather running down the walls like that, so we can do some streaks with a damp brush, not wet through, and then just maybe run it out with a bit of kitchen roll. Yeah, I think that, I don't want to do too much of that, but I think that's okay. So now we'll do a bit of detailing with some paint, and we need a bit of dark for this again. Burnt sienna, ultramarine, and a bit of rose madder. Okay, there's this dark under this timber here. And maybe we could just, with a damp clean brush, soften the bottom edge of that. Not the top edge, just the bottom edge of that, like that. Yeah, that's okay. Let's have a look at that window. That window frame needs a bit more work, a bit more red on it, I think. Sure. It's down this side here that needs a bit more red, I think, like that. Yeah, okay. Some of these lines across are important. It's like a wooden tile almost. But the angle is important. And if you're not sure, as I'm not, I don't want to get this angle wrong. Because all these washers tend to wash your pencil line out. So just, if there's no harm in just re-establishing a few pencil guidelines that you may have washed away. Okay, let's get a bit more dark. Oh, that's a bit clumsy, that. And we can bring that into a bit of timber there. Maybe it's a bit strong, that. Maybe I should take a bit out. Okay, and then working this way now. Not too neat and tidy, it's old weathered timber. And you've got your guidelines back in that help you keep on the right angle. Now it's not just made of lats of timber, this, it's like a timber tile almost. So we will illustrate that in a moment. Okay, maybe just a bit more dark in there. Keep these nice and fine though, these lines, and uneven as well. Quite, as I say, it's got to look a bit old and weathered. Now there's a frame round the door, so let's get a bit of dark into there. That's far too big a lump of dark. Get rid of that. Let's put some colour in the windows. We'll get some. It's really dark inside, so we want a real dark that suggests the dark behind the window pane. So I've gone for the ultramarine, burnt sienna, and rose madder again. But in the right hand one rather, you do glimpse a little bit of colour inside. So a bit of brown will do for that. I've got a bit of burnt sienna basically there. So we'll put that in first there. Now I'm leaving a little bit of white to suggest the frame. And you do this not by painting the white, but by leaving it out. Now it's not as pure a white as that, but that's no matter because I can later on do a bit of weathering of it. These are very dark, these two, so we'll just go dark here. I think actually the problem I've got there is that brush isn't as pointed as it once was. It's a detailer, but it's losing the point a bit, so I've got a newer one. Okay, I now go into this one with the dark and just leaving us a little bit of the reddy brown at that left hand side. And then there's the frame to the window. A bit more red on that, I think, there. Because we don't see much of the white at that side. In fact, we don't see any. That goes right up to the glass, really. Now, the white is just, at the moment, the white is too much. We'll come back to that. Okay, so yeah, we'll come back to that, weather it in a little bit. Take a bit out there, I think. Well, we almost glimpse like a bit of old curtain or something. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so let's look at the door. Still with this rich dark brown. And then there's that bit I put in earlier and overdid it and had to just wash it off quickly. Down there, yeah, that's okay. And then the little, let's get a bit more dark. Gradually it gets a bit weaker as I've got maybe a bit of water on my brush, so we'll just mix a bit more of that burnt sienna ultramarine and rose madder. And there's a little window in the door. Okay, door handle. Maybe a little bit of colour, maybe a little bit of dark down there. Yeah. And it's just a case of being patient and building this up. That window's not right. There's something about that that's not working. Let me try putting a bit of shadow over the centre part of the frame. That's better. I think it's just that the frame is too stark a white. I'll knock that back when it's dried. Okay, let's get some more detail into this. We've got a timber across there. I'm going to soften the bottom edge of that. Yeah, and then I need to work into that again when that's dried. So let's look at what I can be doing somewhere else, and I think I could be putting some shadow onto this wall here. So let's get some shadow colour. I think we're going to make that grey again with cobalt blue, rose madder, and burnt sienna. Not too strong, because shadows have to be sufficiently transparent to see the colour underneath them. And we'll go into there. And all the way along there. Now what I'm going to do here is have the shadow strongest nearest to the light and fade it a bit as I get over this side, so I've still got that lighter bit there. Bit of water to keep it fluid. So it's gradually taking shape. Get a bit more shadow colour down there. And then when we get to that, I'm trying to do it without it being noticeable, but we're still lighter than the colour beyond it. Now I can put a bit more colour beyond it now as well to sharpen that line up a bit. Yeah, okay. Can all look a bit blotchy and patchy. I wouldn't worry about that too much. It's all a bit weathered. Okay, so I need a bit of thinking time. What happens if I don't give myself enough thinking time and I don't keep stopping? It's like with the trees where I overwork them, put too many branches in. So we'll let that dry and then look what else we need to do to develop the building. Okay, so that's coming on. I think you can see that the importance of this line here and this shadow into here is to define that corner and make the building appear three-dimensional, and so far that seems to have been successful. Bit more time to develop this now. I need to look at this little lean-to here that's behind the wheel, behind the spoked wheel, and I had masking fluid on it to protect it, but the problem is I can't take it's impossible to take the masking fluid off that without disturbing the masking fluid on the wheel. So I'm going to have to take all that off, paint this bit, and only when that's done can I'll need to reapply then the masking fluid on the spokes and on the rim of the wheel. So let's take that off until we get a clear view of the shed behind it, and that's okay. I can do that. I can get a bit of colour onto there now. So we'll go back to the red mixture, which was light red with a touch of raw sienna and rose madder to give it that sort of almost crimsony red. Now I don't want to get this on the wheel if I can avoid it, so let's bring that in across there and down there, and we can rub it. We can put some of it, the inside's quite dark, but we could put some of this on for now. Maybe a little bit of purpley colour on it as well. Yeah. Yeah, we can leave that and come back to it. So, a bit more development of this now. I think we can see that I do need more of the, doesn't seem to go very far, the dark brown, burnt sienna, ultramarine, and a touch of rose madder, that rich dark again. It's not dark enough, it's not rich enough, that. More pigment. It doesn't help when you just clean the brush, because the brush has got water in it. That's better. So let's get that, and let's see where we are with this now. A little bit of dark under the snow across there. The roof, let's have a look at that roof. That's a bit of that grey colour that we used before, because part of the roof is partly exposed here. A bit of dark as well in that. Bringing right down to there. Start that into the roof slightly. Yeah, that's okay. Maybe a little bit of dark under the snow here, because the light's coming from the right, so that snow would cast a bit of shadow onto the woodwork. Yeah, that looks okay. Definitely want a bit of shadow, I think, on the white of the window frame. Let's put a bit across there. Yeah, that's better. That's blending it in already. Just a bit of shadow colour. That's the grey, made of cobalt blue, rose madder and burnt sienna. Now we want some timber down here, so a few lines down here, still with the masking fluid on the rim of the wheel here. You need to get these nice and vertical, so this is one of the areas where I would get in the way of the camera if I'm not careful to do this, but whatever. You might even want to rotate your board slightly. If you're right-handed like me, slightly clockwise. The reverse would apply if you're left-handed, I assume. Just so you can get this vertical line down here, and it must be very thin to represent the gaps between the planks. And you're better to do them from the bottom and from the top, because the damp tends to open them up and you see more of them. You see more evidence of the planks, the wood, the gaps between them rather, at the top of them and at the bottom of them. Probably a bit too neat and tidy though, so I'm going to dab that with tissue and take that one out a bit. So yeah, it's a little bit too regular and neat and tidy, so if you can, yeah, just rough them up a little bit. Okay, now we want some, there's a nice bit of dark immediately under the blanket of snow on top there, keeping it nice and white for the moment. And then there's a shadow, a good strong shadow, so I'll mix some more of that cobalt blue, rose madder and burnt sienna. A really good strong, plenty of blue in it and rose madder, so that it's nice and rich, but it's still got to be transparent, not too strong. And what I'm doing is, this is like a box across here, and there's the shadow is underneath it there. So let's look at the shape of that. We'll come right across. I'm using a number 2 brush. Maybe it's a little bit small for this, but the advantage of it is I don't make the thing too big. Okay, and across there, right the way across now. Going behind the seat with that snow sat on top that's still got masking fluid on it. It should overhang a bit more there. I'll come back to that. I may be able to solve that yet. Okay, now don't soften the bottom edge of that because it isn't softened, it's quite a hard edge. We do then see a little bit of timber work. Let's try that. Let's try this maybe here. Yeah, that works. Maybe here as well. There's a line down that edge there. Well, not quite at the edge, but next to it there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's looking reasonably realistic. Okay, so we'll go behind the. We'll get a bit more red in, I think, on there. And we'll get some dark in behind that soon. Do I need to do anything else on this side here? No, maybe not. Oh, I do actually, because what we've got, because this isn't just lats of timber, it's almost like a wooden tile. And I could ignore that, of course, and just treat it as lines across, but I don't want to do that because it's part of what this building is. So let's look just, and you don't want to do every one, of course. You don't want to sort of paint every tile. But if we do a few downward marks like that to suggest them, that's all you need to do though. Don't try doing, don't try illustrating every time. That angle's wrong and it looks really out, that. Yeah, okay, so maybe you see a little bit of tile work here behind the wheel. Yeah. But that's probably enough to just suggest it. Yeah, that's okay. And I think on this shadow here, it's at its darkest right underneath there, so while it's still damp, I'm going to put some dark right along there. Now that could be overdoing it a bit, but I think that, yeah, it sharpens it up. It sharpens it up, looks more realistic. I think just looking at a few things I can be doing. This is about observation. Here we can see that the timber's bleached out a bit with the sun, and it helps to pick out where the shadow is on this side and the light is on that side, as well as making it a little bit more rustic looking and convincing, hopefully. So let's just take a little bit out, dab it with a tissue. Little things like that, they can make quite a difference. Okay, where was I? I'll come back now to this little lean-to we're seeing through here, and it's a bit weathered and old. It's a sort of orangey colour where you see the old weathered timber inside it. So let's start with that. Under here, I'm ignoring the wheel because I've got to put those spokes. I suppose I should have remasked those. I should have remasked those. Doesn't matter, I'll put them in with paint, it's okay. Okay, and then we'll put a bit of shadow into here as well to help make it look a bit weathered and rustic. There's quite a strong dark under there, but we can put a bit of shadow on it first, like that. That's a bit of the grey, cobalt blue, rose madder, and burnt sienna. So, what do we need to do now while that's drying? Let's try and... I'm going to clean an area of the palette. I'm going to try and find a nice shadow colour here, which not as dark as the sky, so it'll probably be more the cobalt blue than the ultramarine. Let's just experiment with a bit of cobalt blue. A fairly cool shadow. Now it is greyer than this, but I don't know. It tends. I might try it without greying it, so that it see if it puts some. See if it looks more lively without greying it. Maybe a little bit on that chimney there. And do a bit of blending. You do see a little bit of the lines of the roof underneath it. Yeah, let's try a bit more of that. Because glimpsing those lines of the roof underneath the blanket of snow helps to re-establish the angle of the roof from there as well. I'll soften that though. I'm making that fairly soft shapes for the time being. Then we could run some shadow across the bottom edge of it like that. That would stop at that corner, I think, about there. Okay, I'm going to bring in a bit more shadow there to really pick out that. Really help to pick out that corner. See, that makes a difference. That really sharpens up that corner there. Yeah, well, what shall I do? No, that's going to need a bit of drying time so I can take stock of what I've done. I don't want to overdo the shadows on the roof. It is, if I were to go strictly with the picture, it's very white actually. But I think I can improve on that and create a bit more shape and form with use of shadow. So we'll let that dry. Okay, so something that might seem strange, I'm going to put those spokes back in with masking fluid. I should perhaps have done it a bit earlier, but they're not going to be white anyway, so it doesn't matter. But it's going to make it easier to successfully paint the dark inside that opening there and still have a slightly lighter colour for the spokes. So it's the small masking fluid brush, dampened and rubbed on a bit of soap, and let's bring this, actually no, before I do that, and it'd probably be well advised to do this if you're going to put these back in, is to re-establish them with some pencil lines. Okay, now we can have another go at them. Keep them nice and fine though. It'll be interesting to see what you get when we take this off. Okay, nice and neat. Yeah, that one's still got the masking fluid on, so we're okay with that. Now that that's dried on the roof, let's try a bit more shadow. I'm going to try something with a bit of shadow from this bit on top here. Because I can't help feeling that with the light coming from the right, we'd have a bit of shadow from that across the roof like that. And maybe grey it a bit nearest to the thing that's casting it. Yeah, I think maybe we could strengthen that as well, that one. Yeah. Okay, so now let's go back to this area. Got to make sure that masking fluid is dried, so I'm not taking any chances there. And if we look at that, there's a real, it's almost like a triangle of dark inside there, which is quite interesting, I think. So we'll want some shadow, first of all. Some cobalt blue, rose madder and burnt sienna. And then we want that rich dark, ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. You can afford to go really dark under there because it's going to contrast well with the little bit of white sat on top of the rim of the wheel and the lighter coloured spokes as well. So let's start with, I've got a number 4 brush. Maybe I could do a bit of washing out like that to create a bit of texture in the wood behind, and then we'll get that triangle in under there, come right down to that corner of the rest of the shed. And then, well, now that's just with the shadow colour. Now I'm going to drop in the really dark one, the burnt sienna, ultramarine and rose madder. Just a really dark, that's okay, that's going to be alright, I think. And then there is a little bit of detail we see inside. There's a timber that runs across, which I might establish first of all by taking a bit of colour out. That's a timber that runs across that way. And then a little bit of dark underneath it. A bit of dark, I think, down there. Yeah, I think that's as much as I need to do. Maybe a little bit of timber. But even though that is glimpsed through the wheel, it's still quite important. There's a bit of timber work across there, and there's some dark shadow right under that eave there. But I've not chosen a shadow colour for that. I want something more definite than that. I've gone for the rich dark brown. Maybe a little bit of timber work coming down there. Yeah. Maybe here we could sharpen that edge up a little bit. I've smudged it with the shadow. And here we need to maybe use a bit of shadow. I've just got a little bit, I've added a bit of blue to the grey. You notice, so it's still blue, but it's a slightly greyer blue. And there's a line across here which picks out where the roof coming that way joins the roof on this little lean-to bit. Let's see how we can do that. Tricky, that. Looks like I'm drawing around it to some extent, that. I think probably, it's alright, I think probably later on I need to establish a bit of white down there. I'd maybe have to put a bit of gouache in there. Yeah. In fact, it's alright saying do that later on. The problem is, I might forget. And you could be in the same position if you need to do this. It might be worth just dropping it in now, because you can forget it and not notice till it's probably framed up and on your wall. It's just to re-establish that corner which I'd lost with the shadow. Better already that. Okay, let's give it some drying time and then take stock of where we are. Okay, so whether I come back to the sugar house or not to do any more work, I don't know, but I don't think so. I think it's about right. That's it's not too bad. So we'll take. I'll take that. I nearly missed that. A bit of masking fluid off there, and just put a bit of shadow onto that field. Sort of grey blue. I've got a cobalt blue that's got a little bit of light red in it too. A bit of burnt sienna in it, which is grey in it slightly. And we'll just dash that across the field. And I'm softening it so that we get to white by the time we're at that. By the time we get to the distant line, it's white. I'll probably dry that straight. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do first. I'll get a bit of dark brown as well, and we'll put a little bit across there. Now I'm going to prop the board up so that doesn't run too far uphill, because I'm putting a little bit, maybe like a little bit of hedgerow or something across there, but I don't want that to climb too high. Maybe it's a bit too brown. I'll grey it a bit. I'll put a bit of grey on it. Yeah, okay, we'll dry that. Then if we look at this little area here, there's a few, it's a bit of hedgerow, trees, etc. In winter, it's just like twigs and branches really. So I'll get the small brush, I'll get a bit of burnt sienna and ultramarine with a bit of rose madder in it. And now that that's dry, I can just put some of these in. Just get a little bit higher than the tree line behind it. Probably later on add a bit of gouache to these as well for a bit of snow settled on them to help pick them out more effectively against the background. But it's important that they are darker than the background so that you can see them, they do stand out against it rather than blending in with the background. Okay, a few more branches up there I think probably. But that's probably busy enough. That. Okay, let's take the masking fluid off across there and have a look at this bit. Well, there's quite a lot of. There's a bit of shadow on it. There's quite a lot of twigs and grasses, quite tall going across that bit, which I quite like. So I'll probably do that. I might have a go at the old plough thing first before I do that. There is one thing troubling me, and it's these two large trees here, which you can just see the base of them, and I've sort of stopped them short of the ground to make it look like they're sort of lost in the mist, or bushes and things, and it's not quite worked. That's not too bad, but this one hasn't worked very well. It's almost as though it's off the ground. So I'm just going to take I've got a number 4 brush here. In fact I've got a number 2 detailer brush, but an old one that's lost its point. And I'm just going to wash a little bit of colour away there. And then bring that slightly orangey colour that I used on the tree. That was a bit of raw sienna with a bit of light red, I think. And then a bit of shadow colour. And bring that right down to behind the snow there. And I think that one's not as bad. But I think she'll probably do it with that one as well, just to, because it's not quite right. You can actually trace them right down to behind this bank of snow, so that's probably what I should do. So a bit of the raw sienna and light red again, and then a bit of dark shadowing, which I can bring up into the bark of the tree. I think that's better. as for that bit of snow, I quite like the way at this point there's a lot of like tall stalks of dead grass or something. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I like the way that forms a bridge between the middle distance and the distance. The first thing to do though is to get a bit of shadow on it. So I've got a bit of cobalt blue. I'll add a little touch of I'll add a little touch of grey to it, to slightly grey it, and we'll put some. We'll just put a bit of shadow onto that to shape it a bit, and then we can put later on. I can go back to it and put in some of these. Put in some of these little grasses and things. That sort of straw colour. Okay, let's dry it and then take the masking fluid off the old plough. Okay, let's get rid now of this masking fluid, and this is the last of the masking fluid on the picture. Okay, so not perfect that by any means, but it's not bad. We can work. I can work with that. Let's start with this wheel. See if we can get this wheel to look convincing. I think we've got a little bit of masking fluid where it shouldn't be, so I'm going to just try to wear it away a bit. We can always use a bit of body colour if we have to. Yeah, there, we could tidy that up a little touch, I think. That's not too bad. Here again. Yeah, let's have a go at this wheel. So I want a nice rich rusty brown. I want some real dark as well, almost black. So for the rusty brown, I think we'll do, oh, there's a little bit of masking fluid on there I need to get rid of. No, sorry, let's see if we can tidy that up as well. And there, that one, those lumps on there. Okay, so I want a real, a nice rusty brown, so I need a new area to mix this, so let's get rid of that. That's the colour from the sugar house. And I'm going to get some, this time I think, where I've used light red on that, I'm going to go more burnt sienna on this, because it's a bit richer, a bit stronger. It'll help to bring it forward. So let's take some light red. I'm going to add a bit of a little bit of raw sienna to it, because it's brighter with a bit of raw sienna in it. And maybe a touch of cobalt blue as well to darken it slightly. That's all right, I think. Now I'm going to need a dark brown as well. So let's mix some more of the trusty burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. I don't think now that I need any rose madder in it. It's about getting the strength in it more than anything now, and that can weaken it slightly, the rose madder. So let's just go with burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and that's got to be quite a thick mixture, because we need a nice strong colour for that. So let's just see what the burnt sienna looks like if I put it on this wheel here. Now it comes to a sudden stop because we lose it in the snow. On the top, there's a bit of snow resting on it. Just around there, about there, the snow. That's not too bad. Got a nice sweeping curve in it. Okay, now I think what we'll do while I've got this mixture, I'm going to go darker as I come from under that arch there. So I've got the burnt sienna and ultramarine into there. Got a touch darker there. Here, yeah, straight after that snow on top, which will need a bit of augmenting with some gouache, I think. We'll go dark there as well. Yeah, a mixture of the dark and the red coming through. Now that stands out quite strongly. It needs a bit of attention where we lose it in the snow, but plenty of time for that. A little bit more dark under there. Yeah, I will need a bit of gouache to make that a little bit higher, the white on top of it. Okay, so let's look at something else now. We need to, I think that's a bit ugly there where I've got too much masking fluid on that. It's a big lump of it, so I'm going to just green that in. I'm going to be better off trying to do that, I think, with a touch of body colour in it. Okay. Right, so we've got spokes here where I had masking fluid on. And that's been reasonably successful, picking out the spoke by masking it after there was already some colour there. But I think we are going to need a bit of gouache along the way to give us some opaque colour. So I'll put that out there at the top. As I say, I always mention this, but I would keep white gouache out of your palette, because it's difficult to see, to find it. It's just to see that it's there, and yet it's tiniest bit of it can really sort of dull your colours down, any subsequent mixtures. Let's try the dark. Okay, let's try the dark here, coming immediately from the wheel. And what we've got here is a little bit of dark against light, where we see the spoke against a little bit of snow on that roof behind, and then light against dark, where we go to a dark shaded area behind it. So we'll start with the dark against light first of all, bringing that down there, and then there. And then I think I'm going to take a bit of, let's take a little bit of maybe a light red with a bit of white gouache, and let's try and pick out a bit stronger spoke colour here, maybe there, just yeah, that's a good colour. Maybe lighten it a bit more. Yeah. There it would be light first of all, and then it goes into the darker colour. And for the dark colour, I'm using the dark brown. And there is a bit of crisscrossing of these spokes. Okay, let's maybe a bit of raw sienna and burnt sienna with a touch of cobalt blue for this one here. And then maybe just a little touch of light red to tint it. Yeah. Go a bit darker immediately under the wheel, the rim of the wheel. Okay. Here we can take a touch of the gouache with light red. And we can bring some spokes in here. Got my hand on that. I could see that coming. I should have taken the time to put that back. I should have taken the time there to dry it. Okay, so then there's this hub, this wheel hub here. I think we can, there's a bit of snow settled on that. So I've got the burnt sienna I've got some of the raw sienna and burnt sienna with a little bit of, it had a little bit of cobalt blue in it for the snow on top of that. And then, oh sorry, I've left the white for the snow on top of that and then bring some dark in underneath it like that. And that's the wheel hub. Okay, I can carry on with this theme by mixing, I'll mix some more burnt sienna and raw sienna with a bit of cobalt blue to darken it. And then I want some more of the, well, I've got a good brush full of it there actually, the real dark one. And we can start to continue the structure of this. And I might try and leave a little, I've got the dark colour first. I'll try and leave a bit of snow sat on top of it there. And there, your eye, the viewer's eye will pick that up. And there's some little like rings there. Yeah. The viewer's eye will pick that little bit of white up on top and it helps to pick it out from the background. Maybe a bit of the red. And a bit of the dark. Yeah, of course, anywhere I leave white to suggest the snow will need a bit of shadow on it. Okay, now we've got this piece of bent metal here that's supporting the saddle or seat. So let's take a bit of colour out of that first of all, and then we'll go for the red. The burnt sienna, raw sienna, and a bit of cobalt blue. Can we lose that in the snow on there? But underneath the little seat is quite dark. Okay, and then there's the dark metalwork of the seat on view there, but most of it is obscured by the snow, which again, it's a side view of it, a little bit of the side of it there. But again, that will have to have a bit of shadow on it. It won't look convincing until it does have. Okay, we've got a bit of structure here. Bit of bumpy and uneven there where the snow sits on top, but in general that goes right across there, goes right across there to meet and that comes down further, and that goes right across this side where it becomes the wheel hub for that wheel there. Now again, I'm risking it a little bit, working along there. Yeah, that now becomes the wheel hub at that side, which you just see a little bit of it sticking out through there. Let's get some more reddy brown, some more raw sienna, burnt sienna and cobalt blue, and some more dark, really dark brown. With something like this, it's tempting to just carry on and just maybe make your paint go a bit further, adding a bit of water, because you're enjoying the painting process, you've got a flow going, you don't want to have to keep stopping to mix more paint. Problem is you do have to mix more paint because you'll just lose that strength in it. If you just keep it going by adding water, that never works. So I've got some more of the reddy brown. And let's have a look. We've got a section. I've got a section that goes across there. Like that. And then there's some pieces that come down. Yeah, got that. Now this is quite complicated. I'm just going to do what I think I'm seeing. Let's bring it in a bit closer. I'm just going to do what I think I'm seeing with crisscrosses bits of dark reddy brown metalwork. If anyone has an understanding of ploughing machinery, they'll probably find all sorts of things wrong with it. But I'm not really worried about that. It's just about the painting working out. It reading like a piece of old farm machinery. And a lot of it is lost in the snow anyway. Covers a multitude of sins, actually, a bit of dry brushwork. Let's just try a bit of scumbling about a bit. I'll get a bit more red. Float a bit of colour into that dry brushwork. Yeah, that should be okay. I've added a touch of raw sienna to that to set a sort of an orangey brown colour for some of the bits of stuff stuck up through the snow, the odd twig and things like that. And then drop a bit of dark into it. Yeah, it needs a bit of shadow around it. Now let's look at this wheel at this side. I think I've got enough space to work on that. I'm going to go back and get some more reddy brown. So I added a bit of raw sienna to that to yellow it slightly. So I've now added a bit more red back in, burnt sienna. And we'll go, I might try and leave the tiniest little sliver of white. Quite tricky to do. So we can still put a bit of dark in as well. Now on the top there, this is a bit tricky, but I'm trying to leave a bit of white on top for the snow. And about there we run out of snow and it becomes a dark coloured wheel. So I'm going to put the reddy brown in first. Try and get a nice neat line shaped right round. And it gets a little bit wider here, the mark, because you stood nearer to it. And the angle of it is such that you're seeing a bit more of it rather than just the side of it. That's going to need developing slightly, the snow on top. Well, it's not bad, but that's going to need developing a bit. Maybe with a bit of gouache at the end. Yeah, okay, now I can't do those spokes because because the rim's still wet, and I'm just going to get it all over my hands and spread it about, make a right mess with it. So let's go back to this one. Is this dry enough now? No, it's not quite. I'll tell you what I need to do, not rush at it and start painting spokes in and then smudging the rim of the wheel. Let's get all of it dry and see what I need to do next. Okay, so now that's dry, I can do a bit more work without worry of getting my hand all over it. We'll try for some more spokes. Although what I will do, I noticed there that I've got a bit of dark behind that, which is blending into the wheel itself, and we're just losing the definition of the wheel. And if I take that out a bit, I've taken too much out there, quite tricky to do that. But if I put let's take a bit of purpley grey, put a bit back in. Now when that's dried, I can redefine the wheel where it was smudging into it. I can also, with a bit of gouache, help define it as well. But before we do that, let's get some more burnt sienna and ultramarine, the nice rich dark. And let's look at the pattern of spokes. Now one thing about these spokes here is that if I paint them in a rich dark colour now, and then I try to put shadows across the snow behind them, the problem I'll get is that the shadow will smudge the shadow will smudge the actual spokes and the actual work I've done with the dark paint, because when you get a dark pigment it does tend to sit on top and it easily comes back to life. So whilst it may seem counterintuitive to put shadow in before you actually put the things that are casting the shadow in this case the spokes, it's worth putting a bit of shadow under this now before I go much further. And I've got the grey, which is cobalt blue and burnt sienna, but I think I want a bit more blue in it. Yeah, I think I'll have a bit more blue in it. No, I think that's wrong. That shadow needs to be. If I look at this, there's a hint of warmth in it. I think that shadow needs a touch of rose madder to warm it slightly now. Now we're getting nearer to the foreground. Yeah, that's better already. Yeah, that's reasonable. Okay, let's, before I put these spokes in here as well, I ought to get a bit of shadow in. Just soften that a touch as well. Yeah, that looks better already. I'm warming to this theme now, so I'm going to continue to do some shadow. Let's try, maybe we could try just a touch of blue as well. Just a touch of cobalt blue. The blue and somehow the blue makes the white seem more intense. Let's clean that up. I got a bit of dark into that. Yeah, okay, and then the saddle there, we could come all the way down there. Maybe a bit of the purpley blue as well. And maybe soften in parts and leave a hard edge in others. Yeah, okay. Right, so I'm getting a bit messy here. So before that dries, let's try and, well, it already has dried, but let's try and clean that up a bit. Maybe a touch of shadow on there as well. Yeah, Okay, so far too much water, far too much paint for me to get my hand anywhere near it at the moment. Let's get it dried. Okay, a little bit more detailing under here. I think there's a piece of metalwork cuts across there. I'm going to wash it out first and put it in with the reddy brown and then the dark brown. There's a few metal supports there. Not sure what it is, but it looks reasonable enough. That's very messy there. It's still not dry enough. So we'll come back to this section here, this left-hand wheel. I don't have to be fully accurate with these spokes, so long as it looks credible, looks realistic enough, believable, in other words. So there's one that goes across there like that. Maybe one there. Yeah, that should be okay. And we lose these in the snow. These are embedded quite deep in the snow, which is part of the picture's charm. That is important, I think. Yeah, okay. So we'll look at the spokes of this one. Let's get it a touch redder. I've got that dark brown, I'm having a touch more burnt sienna to it. And let's look at this. Let's look at this one here. Yeah, that's all right. These are sufficiently dark to pick them out from the nice bright red behind them. Yeah, okay, not perfect these, but it's not like it's got to go anywhere anymore. And it's nice the way those spokes then cross the snow. Yeah, okay, so that's smudged. I got my hand on that, so let's revive that. Yeah, that's probably okay. It doesn't quite look right where it sinks into the snow, but we can make that more convincing with a combination of some shadow and a bit of work with gouache, and we'll probably finish it off with some nice sweeps of shadow across the foreground and some long grasses sticking out of the snow. Let's see what we can do here. I've got the shadow colour, cobalt blue with a little bit of, well, it's a grey. It's got a bit of cobalt blue, and burnt sienna, but I added a little touch of rose madder to warm it slightly, and we can then get a bit of shadow going across here. No, that's not right. That doesn't look credible. The problem I've got, it's not actually, I'm not seeing any shadow this side of it, so I'm having to make it up, but that didn't look right. What else could we do? Let's get a bit of cobalt as well, just dilute cobalt blue. Get a bit of shadow around there. Okay, maybe a bit from here. Yeah, that's better. It's better if you don't try to actually paint a complete shadow of a wheel there, I think. Bring a bit of shadow off the bottom of this, like that, just. Yeah, and we will use a bit of gouache around there. So let's have a look over this side. I want to keep it fairly simple over here with some almost like snowdrifts up to and around the door of the sugar house. Might put a bit of dark on there in a moment to look like a stone underneath it. Let's get a bit of shadow across the foreground. Now if we look at this, there's just a swathe of sort of a purpley grey shadow right across the front there. So I'm going to do that. Cobalt blue, a little bit of burnt sienna to grey it, and then a bit of rose madder to make it sort of purpley grey. Okay, so let's bring some across here. No, that's not right. Because the problem with it is it's not warm enough, it's too flat. A little bit of cold. I know it's a snow scene, but nonetheless you can still have a bit of warmth in the shadow. What's that like? That's a bit better. Okay, so we can be quite brave with this and get it right across the foreground there. But I wouldn't want to take it too far in because it's nice to go to white. And let's brush in a touch of blue as well, a touch of just cobalt blue to really sort of, I don't know, somehow it makes the white look whiter. Which reminds me, I think it used to be years ago, there used to be a washing powder advertised as having blue whitener, so there must be something in that. Let's dry that and see what we need to do to finish it. Okay, some finishing touches required. I still think that it'd be nice to have some of that blue at the top of the sky in the shadow at the very front. So I'm going to just clean up that grey, that purpley grey shadow I had, and just go to the cobalt blue and ultramarine blue that I put in the top of the sky. But I greyed it, I darkened it slightly, not greyed it, I darkened it slightly with a bit of burnt sienna. This might be too powerful, might be too strong, spoil it, so I'm ready with kitchen roll to swipe it off if it doesn't work, but I'm trying to get a nice dark across the front of there to tie up with the dark at the top and sort of frame the scene. So let's see how that looks. Can soften it in a bit so it's not too sudden. Yeah, I think that does. I don't want to take it any further in though, or I'll have no white left. So I think that probably does that job in that it darkens the foreground and sort of frames the scene. Right, a little bit of housekeeping to do. I've got a big dark lump in the sky there, which is going to be tricky because I could end up washing away half the sky trying to get rid of it. But I need to at least knock that back. That's better. We need a bit of gouache. There's one or two areas, but again, you see, I've just wet that foreground with a nice big wash. I'll get my hands and sleeves all over it, so let's just dry it. Something I've just missed here, we could do with maybe a bit of, I'm going to put a bit of red back into that shadow now, a bit of rose madder, a touch of water, and there's a bit of shadow needed around there, I think. Maybe soften it slightly. Maybe a bit of shadow there. Yeah, I think we'll make a bit of a stone or a rock or something there to explain why it goes uphill. But that's when that's dried. Let's look at this area here. We've got a few. I've now changed my mind about that. I was going to put a few of these large reeds and grasses through there, which would be good. That's not a problem. But I think I prefer to get some dark brown, some burnt sienna, ultramarine. In fact, no, I'm going to get a lighter brown with burnt sienna and cobalt blue. And maybe here, just, I don't know, it could be some, make it fairly dry, it could be some, an old wall or something with snow on top. But I think this will complete this end of the picture a bit more. I think an old wall. Now, I'm used to dry stone walls. Where I live in the Peak District, they're all over the place. I apologise if there aren't any in New England, because I've just sort of created a wall. But I like that. I like that the way that it's textured. So it's a bit hit and miss. It leaves a bit of white, and it's got that nice bit of white on top. And I prefer that to the grasses thing. And it explains what happens at the base of the trees as well then, because they go down behind that shape. Now here, again, I think we want a little bit of a rock or something, a stone, something like that, to explain why there's a mound of white there. Yeah, maybe a few little bits of dark into there. Okay, so I've got some more dark brown, some burnt sienna and ultramarine on this small detailer brush. Little things now, I mean, we do want a few reeds and grasses, but there's little things like there, for instance, where I've missed a bit. That could be something lying in the snow. Yeah, I've got a few bits where I'm sweeping across with a fairly dry. I've got some bits here where I'm sweeping across with a brush with shadow wash on it, and you miss the odd bit, like there, for instance, and that where you've missed it, it could be a stone or something with a bit of snow on top. And if you dash off to the left as you do it, like that, suggests maybe a bit of shadow as well. Perhaps a few reeds and grasses. Let's get some raw sienna and burnt sienna. Now let's try this. Maybe a few. Maybe a few grasses. Not many though. You could easily overwork this at this stage and make it a bit cluttered. And then where I've put those, it's always worth remind yourself of the direction of the light and put a bit of shadow across as well. Yeah, they don't look like they're really there until they cast in a bit of shadow. Yeah. Now the final thing is some gouache again. So have I got enough there? Yeah, that's fine. Been thickening up nicely there, laid on the edge of the masking tape there. So let's look areas where we might want a bit of gouache, a bit of white body colour. I think that we need to maybe do a little bit more to bring out the part of the roof where the slope changes, here, where the main roof meets the roof to this little lean-to thing. So a bit of white on there helps with that. Definitely here on this wheel, we can make the top of that look a lot more effective by bringing a bit of snow down there. Same with this one. Start about there, I think. and then it peters out about there. Yeah, I think so. Maybe a little touch of snow amongst all this stuff, the detritus down here lying around under the old plough. Yeah. And going back to the trees, let's look at the branches. I'm trying to keep the gouache quite thick here, so that it picks up a bit of texture, like it's you know, like snow on bark. You get it settling in the gaps between branches. Maybe a little bit there. It's most effective against the dark. Okay, let's get some on the top of here. And we can get some on branches that cut across the other tree. Then across here, and as I said before, I'm not fully happy with that fir tree there, so if I can do anything at this stage now to disguise it a bit, knock it back by bringing some white across branches that are going in front of it, yeah, I think that does help. Right, there's a lot in the crooks of branches up here, and that information's all on your photograph. You look at the crooks of the branches in these trees, quite a lot of snow settled in them. Along there, yeah, just building it up. I think we would also have some down here on the bark. Yeah, that's nice and thick, and it's picking up the texture. Of the paper, a big lump of it there. Let's try and spread that out a little bit. Okay, maybe a little bit whiter there. It was going a bit grey. I think I got a bit too much water on the brush. But again, it's like any other part of it, you can overwork it at this stage. Here, where the branches come across the background, let's help pick them out with a bit of snow on them. Let's have a think. I think it's about done. It might be nice to help get rid of the smudging around there with a bit of gouache. But then I've smudged into the wheel, so I've got to go back to the dark brown and reinstate that there. Yeah. I think one thing that does strike me is these grasses are all one colour, that sort of orangey brown colour. Let's put a few darker ones in. They don't always have to be new ones, we could just darken some that are already there. Burnt sienna and ultramarine. I just noticed looking at the photo, and again it's about using your photo to give you information that some are darker than others. And it makes them look more credible, more three-dimensional. Okay, let's take the tape off, see what we've got. Okay, so it's finished, but I've just noticed one more thing, and I'm always doing this, I know, but when the direction of the light would mean that snow sat on top of the wheel would have just a little bit of shadow on the left of it, and so would that. Now that's subtle, there's little things, as I say, sometimes that make quite a difference. So there we are, finished. Not bad actually, I'm quite pleased with it. I think what I've got here, I've just spotted something else. This metal bar, we don't really need it, that metal bar stuck up there. But I've got a pencil mark that is now sealed into the painting with all the washes that have gone on top of it. So I've got to put it in real or it looks a bit weird. Why is it there, that pencil mark? So I'm going to start by washing a bit of colour away. And then let's get that reddy brown, raw sienna and burnt sienna, and then the real dark brown, burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. Okay, so it goes right up to there, and then there's the real dark one. Yeah, I don't know what it's for. It's obviously part of the mechanism, but like you say, sometimes it's better not to put too many pencil marks in because you are committed to using those then. But yes, what I was saying is that the thing I most like about it is it looks quite three-dimensional. I managed to get this to look in front of the sugar house, which so that you get a sort of three-dimensional look to it. I like the red I got for the sugar house and the way that contrasts with the blue behind it. That always works well. Not so keen on these trees. I mean, the trees are quite reasonable in themselves. I've not done a bad job of those. It's just I overworked them. And if you look at this, look at the gaps in between the big branches there where you're seeing the blue sky. I've sort of filled them in totally. Now that depends on the species of the tree and how old it is, whether it's lost some branches, etc. It's not that they wouldn't look like that. It's just that I would have preferred that a bit less busy, so you focus more on that. It can take your eye over to those trees when really what we're looking at is the main composition, the sugar house and the old plough. But there it is, another finished painting.